So welcome you guys. So this is not a very official presentation. I want engagement with you guys. So please ask questions anytime. Stop me as many times as you want, and there's tons of questions. So the good news is I'm going to give you some extra stuff in here that maybe other people don't know, except for the people that were here before you. And there really is some good stuff in here. So these are roughly the topics I've got on the slide deck, but that's not all the things we could talk about. It's got to be whatever interests you, because I'm here to try to help you all, right? So please do ask me anything that you want. So it's important though for me to just tell you about what FRC is doing behind the scenes. So we've got all these programs here. So from junior FLL all the way through, and you all know that we have FTC now, right? Anybody know how many FTC events we have this year? 1. How many teams, FTC teams in Ontario? 30. So first year, 1 event, 30 teams, right? We were thinking between 30 and 36. That's why maybe you're wondering about that. Next year, if I have my way, 200 teams, because I'm crazy about FRC. But I also know the void that exists out there to help schools get more schools involved in FRC, right? So some schools that may feel like FRC is too hard at the beginning, maybe they want to adopt FTC. Or maybe they want to do just FTC, right? It's whatever it wants. The good thing to know is FRC is not about doing anything to keep kids involved in the STEM piece. But in the bottom center, you see FRC Lego League. So that's the one big thing that is brand new also this year. So FTC is not the only new kid on the block. So we're going to do, and why is this important for you? So does your team reach out and mentor other teams? Does it help grow other teams? Why wouldn't you want to say, hey, first, tell me how I could support some FLL Junior Discovery kids, which is K to 1, grades K to 1. I'll share a little bit more with you later about that, but I'm just so excited and I wanted to tell you about that one piece. And there's just a snippet of our programs which you could pull off the first site anyway, but this part doesn't include the Discovery Edition of the FLL Junior. So to try to make it better for you, I have this thing's kind of like Jeopardy, right? You get to pick the topics you want to talk about. So I'm going to ask you, anybody in the audience, to just tell me. I'll click on one of those links and it will go to topic items specific to that. Good things for you to know. You don't have to be shy. Yes?
Kids, game pieces, and first choice.
Wow, that's pretty interesting that you asked that, because that is the reason that is in here is that so many teams don't understand that process in the timeline. So can you put your hand up if you feel like your team's a strong team, a mentoring strong team? Yeah? Okay, so y'all should be helping other teams understand this. Because you know when you get the emails from FRC, anybody on your, like you guys on your teams, any of you, the communications person, that you get access to any of those emails from FRC? No? No? You do? You do. So, do you know the first choice structure throughout the year and the schedule and all that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. That's fantastic, because most mentors don't know. Right? So the key is, how do we help the rest of all of us know how to go about first choice? So, those bottom bulleted points on there are hyperlinked, so they'll take you to the newest information, which you can already get this, you just go to the website, but those are hyperlinked to the FRC website. It'll tell you all about the dates for the first choice, which happens to be, by the way, I have it on here, December 4th and January 9th. Now, I know January 9th is good because it's after the release of the game, right? You know what the game is, but you already know who's experienced with first choice, that most of the good stuff's gone by the end. So it's our duty to try to help those other teams that don't know, what should you put on your list on December 4th to be able to get and use your first choice credits. Extra game pieces. That's a hard question for teams. You don't know what the game is this year, but I would tell you, maybe it's a good idea to just get one extra game piece, even though you don't know what it is. And you can use the credits from first choice and what have you to be able to say to Andy Mark or Studica here in Ontario that you would like them to reserve a game piece for you. So you don't have to use your credits if you don't want to, because you could always just call Studica or email them and they'll reserve, they'll buy game pieces, bring them in, and have them available for you. So you could go pick them up right after the kickoff if you wanted to. So that's just a little bit of insight into that. I could go into all the details about kit of parts and all that, but we don't know what's in there this year. All I know is what you can find out by going online and looking at what they posted there. So, do we have another topic? There's some really good topics up there. But I'll leave it up to you to ask me about it.
Provincial championships.
Provincial champs. What would you want to know about them? It's a pretty hot topic right now. There's been some gray area around where the championships is going to be or when, because we haven't posted it yet. All the other events are posted except champs. The reason is we've been toying with the idea of would we move the champs to another venue or not, and how would that benefit teams? So we haven't made that decision yet, but I can tell you you'll see something posted in the next 2 weeks. Right? We'll have the information up there for you. What I can tell you that we are absolutely sure it's week 7, which is the same week as we've had lately, for the last 3 years, or last 10 years, or since we've had districts, I guess you could say. The key thing is to keep in mind it is Easter weekend. So all those issues that surface again with Easter weekend, you have to make sure that you consider. We, as an organization, will do whatever we can to make it easier for your teams on those days. So, for example, Friday is Easter Friday, Good Friday. We'll try to reduce that day and not tax the teams as much to make it easier for you to do the things that you might want to do with your family and so on.
Now, when you say a different venue, do you mean like still in Mississauga, or do you mean maybe possibility of being somewhere else?
Possibility of somewhere else, but you'll know for sure in a week, 2 weeks. But we think we'll have something out to the public at the earliest, the end of next week. All I can say is I'm really excited about what's happening, so you'll hear a lot more. I can't say any more about that, but in 2 weeks you will know for sure, right? But it is week 7, not week 8 like there was rumors going around we're going to try week 8 because there's 2 weeks between Worlds now, Houston and Detroit. So we wanted to give our Ontario teams the benefit of having a week 8, so you have that week between McMaster and District Champs, and then you have another week between that and Worlds. But we weren't able to swing that and make that happen. So we're back to week 7. The key thing here that's really, really important to tell you that's new is the last bulleted point talks about what you might think on the surface is what we've done every year in the last few years, but it is 80 teams. It's 2 fields, but the goal this year is 2 fields but 1 event. So, I know, a lot of pros and cons with that, right? However, we know as an organization, we think we can give you a better experience if we do it this way. So what that simply means is, let's say we still have science and technology divisions, but during quals, you can all still be playing on both fields now. So everybody will know they can hook up. There's no strange field for somebody who wasn't on science. Science will still be the championship field this year, but everybody would alternate throughout the event. That said, there's only one level of awards now. It's that District Champ Awards. It's not the winner of this field, the winner of that field. It would be all one. All right. So that's the goal. The part that's hard for us is we have to have headquarters redo all the programming for us, and they promise they'll do it. So I've been on this for 2 years now, which also, by the way, helps you. You're still going to get the same matches, but you won't be as busy during those tight timelines of those days. So it's going to be better for teams by a long shot. Your event should be, in terms of time on task, at least 3 to 4 hours shorter, and that's a lot, believe me. Yeah.
So you say 2 fields but 1 event. So like same, like just 40 teams on but you just switch fields?
Really good way to look at it. So that's how it's been. 40 teams on each field. It's going to be 80 teams that play on 2 fields randomly.
Okay, so you're all 80 teams are going to be intermixed, match schedules. Okay.
Yeah. So the other good news is you will now also have a chance to potentially play. You know how last year you wouldn't get to play somebody on that field until the championship rounds? Now you could be randomly playing each other all the time.
But it's 1 picking or 2 picks?
One.
One pick?
A line selection?
Yeah, one
line.
line section.
Yeah, are the pits gonna be organized any differently because of this?
It's a really good question. Well, first of all, I think the pits have sort of worked out pretty good, right? And the
Yeah.
last year, 2 years ago when we had the ice rink was another story. That's not happening ever again, just so you know. However,
Different location.
if the location is different, you will know. But I've already done the pits in what could be another location, and I just say you would love it. It would just be so good.
Better than that long walk from the technology division. Oh.
Yeah. Well, and that in itself is a bit of a pitfall for the this new model. If this model's played at Hershey or Paramount, the benefit was, the furthest practice field played on the closest field, like technology, and the closest practice field played on the science field. That's how that was set up, right? So I know 2056 for 2 years have been on science, right? I think. So you guys had to go.
No, they were.
Science and then technology.
Oh, you were? You did? Okay.
Last year,
Um,
technology.
But we were always in the same pit area.
Yeah.
No, we were.
Yeah, if you're in the same-
We switched.
Yeah.
Oh, you did switch, eh? Okay. So, anyway, the point is, the first pit, was it technology, sorry, science field was the closest pit because it goes to the furthest field. But the furthest pit came to the closest game field. That was to try to minimize. And honestly, we do things like we walk, we time seconds to see how much disadvantage there is to teams. The other thing I like about this model is it will also create opportunities perhaps to have a little bit more time between matches, right? We hope. So that rotation or the match cycle time should be less.
Can we get more matches with 80 teams?
You mean more than 12? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Because the question is always, how do you feel about 12 versus 11 or 10,
No.
We know that the majority want those, as many matches as possible. And that'll come up a little bit later when we talk about a couple other key items where, the tips from some top people in FIRST across North America speak a lot about the importance of durability of your machines this year, because you're going to be practicing potentially 14 weeks plus, right? Like driving that robot, driving it like crazy, or a second or whatever your choice is. So, I have this here, so I'm just wondering if anybody would like to pick a top. Mr. Hunter, do you have one of those topics would be interesting to you? I know what he's going to pick. Or independent.
I don't see room in them. No.
One of the things you should know, because I want to make sure that if we're going to run out of time, that you do get this little bit of insight. So here's something that we've never done before: event registration. So I have 2 slides here to share with you, but what's important here is, I do a lot of, I seek a lot of feedback in the off season. So I'll ask teams, what are you thinking? Like, how are you going to select your events this year? What are the thoughts? So I could get a sense of what's going to happen, so I could better plan to help mitigate any problems that are going to occur. But basically, we have 163 or 66 teams that have registered, which is great, because the amount of teams that don't register when they should, it's incredible. So that's really good. It means 23 of our teams have not registered. And that 23, the reason it's 23 is because we had 173 teams last year, plus right now 12 rookies in the system. So 185 teams. So 23 haven't picked, but that number is going to potentially go up. So between now, today, and the next pick cycle, which is October 10th, 23 more teams could pick a spot. But they can do it right now, and it's on a first come, first served scenario. So a lot of teams don't know, what if I didn't pick on time, what do I do, right? But the next point, what some of the teams are telling me, and I know for some of you this is not difficult to understand, but spreading out the events allows you more time to do what you need to do. It's more of a significant advantage this year. And of course, conversely, if your events are back-to-back, and I've had people tell me they're going to pick one weekend and the next weekend with the event. So what are the problems with that? The ability to modify. Really good news. Right now, all the events still have spots available right now. Can you believe it? This never happened before. Now, we did try to do some prep work to try to help move people to better understand how to pick and to pick in ways that really matter. The one thing that was still surprising to me is that teams, the rule is, if you want an event, just pick that event, don't pick anything. Don't say 2 events. People don't get that, because I had half of the teams picked more than 2 events, 2 or more. Some teams pick 6 events. Anyway, it causes problems, and they're problems that I can't necessarily help fix for you. That said, you'll see on the next chart, I'll leave that one to the next chart, October 10th is the next registration, right? So you all know what you're going to do. So here's the good thing that I've never done before. This is where all the events sit at a glance. So when you look at this, those are the registrations. I don't put the event names up top, but you can sort of guess, all right? But they're not 100%. So some of the, like this is week 1, these 2 is week 2, week 3. Those could be alternating, right? But what does this pattern show you? That teams did exactly what they said we were going to do. They're going to pick early and late. It doesn't really reflect that much because you guys picked late. So the question is, what are you picking for the next event, right? How early is that next event, and what's your rationale for it? And that's up to you. But this gives you a glance of what's starting to happen now. So what it also means is there's not a lot of room here. So this graph also tells you some key indicators. Every event right now, those of you that are data gurus would have looked at all the events and did an analysis to realize there's only 30 spots available for every event. I think except Carlton. And there's reasons for that. So what that means is, here's our cap right now. Nothing's hit the cap yet, which is good news, because every event's got some people in it. So there's room for everybody can be happy. Typically, we've gone up to 40 last year, right, was the max on the event. We're not doing that this year under any circumstance. So 2 years ago, I made that same comment to the first community, and I held to it. No matter how difficult the situation was, we weren't going over 30. Last year we had the end of a cycle of growth where there was just, the room wasn't there for our teams, right? So we gave up and we acquiesced and went from 38 to 40 on some events. We will never, ever do that again here in Ontario, just so you know. All right? And there's a lot of reasons for it. What we are going to do this year is try to bring the average to 36 across all the events. It makes it good for a lot of reasons. The key piece is that the math people should be thinking right now, well, you were telling me 30 is the cap rate now you're talking about 36, so what gives with that? So we will be releasing some spots over the next little while. And part of the reason of us doing this is we're looking ahead to, could there be a problem with schools, down the road with the labor unions and all that kind of stuff. So by keeping the cap lower, we can sort of steer balanced registration across events, but save room to help if there's a problem. Right? So my message to you now is still pick the event you want, no matter what, even if it's full, go on a wait list and fire me an email and say, what do you think about my situation? And I'll tell you honestly, all right, to try to help you make the best decisions possible. So you're not going to see, no events is going to go up to 38. And the other reasons why we're holding back spots, like the Carlton one, is why. Does anybody know? Why would we hold back spots? Yeah?
For rookie or new teams?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, your second pick is October 10th, right? But it's not until November, mid-November, where we could still sign up more teams. So if all the spots are gone, how do we give them a spot in the event, right? So that should tell you that all of the spots would be coming free by the end of October, beginning of November. So that's where I have a little bit more chance to help move somebody around if I have to. And that's about all I can say about this. Any questions about that registration piece? Pretty important stuff. I mean, again, certain teams already know. Where's my mouse gone? I need my mouse.
Just on a big screen. big screen?
The projector, it was there.
Oh, thank you. That's very helpful, yeah. All right, pick an audience engagement. Let's go. Pick a category.
Kids.
Who?
Kids.
Oh, we did that already.
Okay.
Nothing big anyway. It's just pointing everybody to the Friends blog and the website around the first choice piece. And what I was saying to people is to please take some of that knowledge that you have and help other teams understand the first choice cycle, because they miss out, and it's just so unfortunate. Whether you're picking on December 4th your items versus January 9th, once you know the game, but then of course all the stock is gone by that point. One thing we did talk about last session, and somebody brought up a good point, is they're looking at trying to do bulk ordering. So they've talked to a family of teams, and they're going to try to put one order into Andy Mark and get that shipped, so they share that cost of shipping is significantly smaller. But first of all, shipping on time it's important, but it's not as crucial as it has been in the past, because the build season is 14 weeks versus 6, right? So can you wait another few days for the gearbox? Yes. But maybe a smart team wants to now, because NAFTA is going to get signed, we think, and that allows $200 per person any time of the day to bring stuff across. So you could have a PO box over there and get stuff shipped and go get it from back. Be easy now. Yes.
What our team's trying to do is because of like the school board, like labor union thing, we're trying to order whatever we need that we need access like the school's credit card thing for. We're ordering like our basic stuff as soon as we can so that we have access to that money. Because what will happen is our lead mentor is a teacher, so he has the access to the money to the school board, but because they have a work rule, he's not allowed to run the extracurricular, and so we wouldn't have access to that money. So we're trying.
Absolutely.
We run
And-
on a program as a class.
Pardon?
Night school, we run robotics as a night school, so
Oh,
that's
that's
cool.
cool.
So right away, without looking at his shirt, I would think he's from Holton. No, because I know they run that class. What he's talking about is tying the FRC back to what happens in the class, which now allows you to continue with it because it's programmed really, right? But we could talk for 5 hours about all the things that could happen and how to get ready for. But that's a really good point, the money piece, because that could shut down. The other piece is, how do you have access to your robots if it's in the school?
We have like a backup plan if all of us are working in someone's basement.
Somewhere on here, it prompts me to speak about this, but maybe I'll just say it. So First Canada, part of those caps that we've talked about, we've reduced by 6, is to try to help put us in a position where we can help teams. If something was to go wrong, first of all, the news right now to us is everything's pretty good. I mean, we're all going to maybe hear something new tomorrow, because there's something that's coming out from the unions. But we're putting in measures to try to help our teams that if they were stuck in a crunch, what would that look like? And the key thing is it depends when that happens, how much we're able to help you. But by holding back some spots and events, if something really terrible happened for one, we could help move teams to another event, right? So you understand that rationale there. Just one of the examples of the big things that we're putting aside to make sure that we're able to make things good for our teams. Anything else? Frank Merrick says, let's be frank out there. I talked to him yesterday, and those of you that know Frank, see, I need to look up there for my mouse now. Those of you that know Frank, what he says about this no stop bill date is that, yeah, we don't have it right yet. There are a lot of gray areas. The only thing that we sort of got a handle on is the second robot issue coming into an event and the cheesecaking. Pretty clear about that. A lot of other questions they don't know about. So one of the things that we're doing is we're working with our head robot inspector and making sure that he's attuned to what's going on. He's going to be checking in with the US all the time beyond the Q&A piece. So he's very clear, and he's going to communicate back to the team. He told me it's okay for any of your teams to email him. Because in my opinion, there's nothing better that if you're at an event and you had a problem with your drivetrain being approved, but the head ref says this is okay, then you're probably okay. But it's not going to hurt to be able to do that. But the main point that Frank is saying is it's going to take us years to get this no-stop building right in terms of all the little gray areas or loopholes that they haven't figured out yet. Speaking of that, in June, I always go to a week-long conference at headquarters in New Hampshire. And yes, it's a whole week of meetings, if you can believe that, from 8 in the morning to 4 all day long. And then sometimes at nighttime. But anyway, one of the sessions, Frank was presenting there, and so everybody came. There was like 150 people in that session, right? Because Frank was presenting. All Frank had was one slide with 17 items on the slide. Just a text-based slide, 17 items. And he was just going to go hard at it, right? The interesting piece was, only 2 things on that slide did he have a solution for. The other 15, he said, we don't know what we're doing. And that was in June. So that is speaking to the difficulty they're having to better understand all the loopholes that are available. But they are making large progress. And what he told me was the best piece of information I can give you is get on the Q&A and ask the questions. Because what's happening is they're now at the point, if there's not questions on the Q&A, they're going to shut it down. So it's not threatening anything. It's just saying we don't need to pay time to it if people aren't asking the questions. So I would even just put people answering questions, 1 every 2 days for my team or whatever, just for the sake of doing it. And that's basically the blog there about use it or lose it. Season tips is pretty good. The mentoring certificate. So Team 2056 did a presentation this morning on chairmans. It was very good. One of the 3 areas they identified as things to focus on as a team going for chairmans is how do you provide evidence of that data that you talk about? What does that really look like, and what are the metrics behind impact? It's hugely crucial, right? So when you say, I've mentored 47 FLL teams and 26 junior FLL and 3 FRC teams, where is the evidence? Right, so that's just one example that judges struggle with. How do I decide between 865 and what they say versus 2056 and all the other teams that are doing all these great things? So we started last year, and the idea was to try to help judges better be able to assess the authenticity behind the numbers that teams are putting forward. So this idea of mentor certificates, I'm encouraging you to look into it more. It's right on the website. Just go to First Canada, click it. It tells you. The key thing is the data, the criteria behind mentor certification is based on, not mentor certification, it's when your team mentors another team. It's based on the chairman's criteria. So, not every team's going to be able to maybe do that, but you should at least know about it. And the thing I was trying to tell teams last year is, a judge can ask you, hey, what do you, they may not say mentor certification, they might say to you, can you tell us a little bit more about how you can provide evidence of the good work that you're doing? So, what are you going to say? Phone John, who's running the team over here, and he'll tell you I do a good job. But if that's already archived, and you're recognized for it through a digital certificate, to me that would be huge. And what that does is just one piece of helping judges do a better job in getting it right. The judges really like it, by the way. That's the feedback I get from them. And the hidden stuff behind the scenes, just so everybody knows, the judges get updated reports before every event of the teams that have those certificates. So my question to you is, why wouldn't you do it? Because y'all, all the teams do good stuff, but get the external recognition for it from First Canada, that stamp of approval. So I think that's going to become big. Last year, the judges were informed about it, and they were just told that, just be aware of it. Teams might mention it, some won't, but don't penalize somebody if they don't. This year is going forward full force, just so you know. It'll be key things for that, yeah.
Does that apply to all levels of first, like if you
Yes.
mentor FL,
Yeah.
FL junior,
Yeah.
and FRC?
Mm-hmm. So, and again, if you do an FTC team, are you going to support I think 26 do an FTC, right? So there's a beautiful example right there, right? But where we differentiate between teams is if 3 teams are helping Team X, Team X will identify the team that helps them the most, and that's the one that gets a certificate. And believe me, we do know the data behind that. So when it all comes back, and so what happens is your team goes on and says, I mentor a team, like, whatever, 10 years ago, maybe 11, 14 would say, I mentor team 2056. And then they would click a button, and an email would go to 2056, Mr. Hunter, and it would say, can you respond to all these questions? We don't say, is it true? Say, respond to these questions, which really inherently says it's true or not. And then you click it, and it comes back to First Canada, and we evaluate it, but we could, within a minute, we could tell you how authentic that is. And if we're confused or there's gray area, we'll make some calls and make sure it's right. But that right away gives you hard evidence of what you do. To me, it's a no-brainer, right? And that, just to give you the background on that, that stemmed from my conversations with Cindy Stahl at Worlds for many years about what is it that we could do to help the judges do a better job. And we talked about how they struggle with evaluating the authenticity behind the data. So, any topics, you guys? Any other ones? And it doesn't have to be up there. You can ask me anything you want. Yes?
So I just want to talk more about reserving game pieces. So,
Yes.
so we can do that during the first, what do you call it? The first time when the first choice is open,
Yeah,
right?
December 4th.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. So if you go on this blog, so let's go, my goodness. I'm going to look at Frank's stuff. Oh, it's not this one. Where is it? Maybe it's here. Yeah. Okay, so if I go here, Frank's blog, Kid Apartments. Yeah, it's all right here on my screen. It's got that silly thing here. But tells you all the updates on it. The other piece is, the kit of parts. You can get the laser cut drive chassis. Whether your team gets that or not, you get $450 credit if you opt out. So that's pretty cool, right? Or you could take that kit and make it easy for you to give to a team you're mentoring, right? Because now think about that piece and how you're leveraging that piece. And then those credits you can use towards the game pieces. Canada is the only international team country that they're letting reserve game pieces ahead of time. So it's really important, right? Like the year of the Stronghold with those balls that cost $40 a piece, and then you couldn't get them because they're sold out. That's the key thing. The problem is you have to say you want to reserve a game piece without knowing what the game piece is. So my advice from a mentor's hat, when I wear the mentor's hat, you're crazy if you don't get a reserve a game piece. Yeah.
What about old game pieces? Like if you want to get a bunch of them.
If you want to.
Yeah.
Well, what I would do is depending on what they are, like wiffle balls, from a few years ago, I would be, you what?
I think we already have cheap paint.
Yeah. Well, no, but if you look at what the game piece is and how functional would it be for a school to maybe have. So you going in saying that you're going to help this school and create more experiences for the kids in that school by giving those game pieces to them, that's a good thing to brag about, right? And if you're really stuck, I would say you could call the first warehouse and just ask them, right? Because we always get calls for game pieces, right? So we'll send them out to different groups.
If I wanted say maybe 100 of the years.
Why would you need 100 years?
Oh my
Don't worry about it.
I know. That was.
Oh, there that many in
That's one of the non-reusable. You know what? I just moved, right? And you can bet I have like 25 totes that I used to help them move, right? How great is that? Put all my tools in there and.
Are you trying to host an entire set of
the
events
milk
in
crate,
Riga?
that's where I keep all my first stuff.
So by game pieces, do you mean you reserve,
No,
so we don't know how many game pieces there are, right?
Okay, so you guys should know this person. The good news, like what to expect when you go to the event, I probably should have said this last one. There's no bag, right? So you can go to the event, you can get right to your butt. How great is that? So that just tells me something I forgot. When you load your stuff in, yeah, we always wait that 1 hour anyway. Like you can't access the robot till 5. But what the difference is, you're not waiting for inspection. Now you can get to that robot immediately, right? But then you should have a more ruthless plan on what you're going to do ahead of time to make your inspection easier and it gets done quicker. So you can get to those practice matches, right, in the filler line. That said, this guy, Hinko Young, is our lead robot inspector for the province, right? That's his email. He says, email me anytime. And he's the guy that's going to be checking with headquarters all the time. You know, he's out in Windsor area now. That's where he works. So I'll bet you, like if I was the team in Windsor or London area, I would have him out, and I'd buy him dinner, and I'd have him go through my robot way before I compete. And he'll tell you straight up. And then the key thing is when you get to the tournament, you've already got his like semi-approval for your robot, right? So a lot of good things that could happen from doing that. The big thing, you know, people say, oh yeah, 14 weeks now, let's not do anything for the first week and all that kind of stuff. It's up to all of you and everybody to do what works for you, but as a guy who's been around for a while, you front load and then you ease off once you know what's going on, and you use all that extra time to practice. And again, he told me specifically his interpretation of what Frank Merrick is saying. There absolutely no cheese picking this year. So nobody's putting a climber on another robot, right?
No cheesecake.
That's the word. So keep in mind, inspectors, it's going to change what inspectors look for now. Just before I answer that question, I just got to make sure I mention this to you too, please. Y'all are good teams. So why? What team are you?
Oh, I'm a 3571.
Who?
3571.
3571. So, can I pick on you for a second?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So why do we not have anybody on our key role volunteer group from 3571?
Don't know.
How many 2556?
Yes, no.
Three?
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. How many?
I think one.
More than your.
More than I expected.
Okay. So my point I'm trying to make is, you got a lot of experience across all the teams in Ontario, and we want to put the best event on for you, by far. Like that's the only reason I have gray hairs, because I try to do everything to make the events the best possible for you. The more people you put forward from your team to take on these roles, the better it's going to be for everybody. Even better than that, the better it is for that person that's going to become that volunteer, because you're going to get connected and exposed to all the rich benefits of FIRST, even more so than the participants on the team, right? So it's that next level for you. It's what is my impact in FIRST beyond the team? And you could almost argue that, well, once I attain that richness beyond the team, I can bring that back to the team, right? So there's all those great pieces that could happen. I think that's pretty much, yes.
This is more about, so would it putting like, in one time in the past on one robot, we helped them put encoders on their robot? I believe they were auto encoders though. Do we know like?
I don't think that's a problem.
Okay, yeah, well,
It's just mechanisms.
yeah, I was guessing it was.
Yeah, it's like, you know, Stronghold, 2016,
Yes,
one team putting their timer on another robot. Like,
yeah,
that's not.
that also happened in Steamworks.
To a large degree, too, first it has to rely on the gracious professionalism, right? For people to follow that piece. It's like, you know, 2000, I don't know, the Taupe year, 14.
14.
With the garbage can, Steeler, and then all that work behind trying to modify other people's grippers to be able to grab those garbage cans and all that stuff. You had a question.
Yeah, my question was, so from the rules I've read, you're allowed to bring up to 150 pounds of robot to the competition. But what they didn't include was like, you know, displays. Like it said you were allowed to bring displays. So like an example would be like, if I brought like, let's say an extra intake or like, you know, we had a really cool mechanism just to show off the judges, would that still be allowed if that wasn't going to be on a robot at any time of the event?
I think so.
I'm sure.
I'm not the inspector, but I think so, from what
I'm
I've
sure
heard.
they'd have a way to like, so they mark it so it can't be put on the robot. Like your display objects or whatever.
Well, one of the key things is we're not doing the, you know, when you come in, we're checking your parts things. I think that's gone, right? That withholding thing of 35 pounds, that's gone now. So, like, I mean, let's be honest, a team would say, well, we could take the shooter and have a different shooter here, or take the shooter off, and that's what we're bringing in. But we have spare parts for the shooter inside the toolbox, probably all of those different pieces. That checking and the policing, I think, is going to go away a lot more now, right? It's really going to be everybody's got time to work on the robot, The only thing they're saying now is when you're at the event, so you know how it's, you come in on, say, Friday and you do your practices, and then you play your first few matches, then you go, oh my God, I just saw 2056's intake. We could make ours like that. Tonight, let's make it, right? That's the part you're not supposed to do. So how do you mitigate that again? I don't know. It's what you bring in the next day, what have you. I think though the key is, here's where the key definition is. And again, I'm not the guy making the rules, so I might have it slightly wrong, but everything points to the rules pertain to your robot. Other stuff, they're not worried about that so much. It pertains to the robot. The only thing that I've heard about the other parts, like if you have a mechanism like a new intake, if you bring an intake in with all the motors on it, all the gears on it, all that, that's where there's a problem. The loophole I think exists around just if you don't put motors on, then we don't know. It's not called a functioning robot. That's what the definition of a functioning robot. There's a lot about that in the Q&A now.
So let's say that during the match or during an audition your intake breaks. And usually our team would bring an extra
Yeah,
intake.
yeah.
So how would that work this
I
time?
don't think that's any problem.
No, okay.
But that's my interpretation.
Okay.
Like, that's not when we could. There's times at events where I can totally disagree with the head rep, the lead robot inspector, and whatever. They're going to make the calls first, and so I'm just saying that because you don't take my word today on stuff like that. As that's it for sure, and you're going to say to the inspector like, "All right, well, Hobbins told me I could do this." They're going to say it doesn't matter, right? It's stuff about events and planning for events and all those kinds of things that I can definitely give you a concrete answer on now. Yeah.
So previously, once you're into an event, there's no bringing any outside stuff in after. Is that going to change this year? Say you've gotten into the event and you need a certain part back from the school, say, or something along those lines. Are you allowed to bring that in now?
Well, that is talked about a lot. This past week, they put a lot of things on Wednesday on Q&A that reference that. So I'm going to say read that. I'm not copying out. I'm just saying they're going to answer and respond that way. I think it brings the conversation back to, here's my robot coming into the tournament. If I bring this other thing that looks just like that robot into the tournament, it's got all the motors on it and everything, that's where a problem is. Okay. But if I bring components of this and pieces of this sort of, even though it looks like this, that's okay. That's what I read into it, but you have to check those rules to be sure. Okay. I think the thing is, it's going to be way easier for everybody, right? You're going to be able to, whatever you design and plan, I think it's going to be way easier to incorporate that and bring it forward this year. If you have to ask yourself the question, oh, is this cheating if I do this? Then it probably is cheating, right? So you have to make those decisions accordingly. Any other questions? Did you have a question? No? The other thing I encourage teams to do is to stay in contact with me. Check in with me. If there's, especially if something's not great happening with the team, check in with me, whether it's got to do with events, maybe finances or something. Sometimes teams wait till it's too late to acknowledge, and then they pull out, and then it's like, oh, I could have helped you. That kind of scenario, right? Human nature is to not tell people things until it's too late. So you don't want to be in that boat. Okay, I think that's it, unless there's something else from you guys, in general.
FTC.
Can I ask you a question? How many people are going for chairmans this year in this room?
As in our teams or?
Yeah, teams, like. Okay, so 2 teams?
I
You don't know? Okay, yeah.
No,
We're gonna have a meeting.
Yeah. The other thing that 2056 talked about this morning that was pretty good, they started to identify the piece about, getting, working with other teams and practicing and all that. I can't tell you how valuable it is to work with other teams. And I remember years ago telling the other mentors on my team, we're going to work with this team and this team all year long. Oh, I don't want to do that. That's crazy. I don't like them. It doesn't matter. It matters about opportunity and growing the team, right? That whole piece of, I'll give you a real concrete example here. In 2013, when they won the World Championships, They also won it with 610, right? The reason 610 was chosen, besides 610 just being a very good team, was they had practiced together a lot and they knew the weakness of 610 versus the strength. It was so easy to say, hey, you know what? We know that your weakness isn't a problem for us because your strength is something maybe we can't do, so we can offset how we play the game and go and play hard. So understanding and being able to work with somebody is hugely valuable, right? And even if it boils down to understanding somebody else's weaknesses, it's very important. And it's funny, I'm talking about weakness, and that's why we picked the team, right? We didn't pick them because of weakness. We picked them because we could work with what the strengths were that they had. And you all know, you guys, 2056 knows that all too well about what's our scouting based on and how do we make those choices on who we partner with. Anyway, I'm going to stop now because I know you guys got to get to other sessions, and I think we're over time.
Nope, you still have 15 minutes.
We're early.
Yeah.
So I can shut this and we can talk about anything you want, if you want to.
You were talking about FTC. Our team hosts an FLL qualifier. Now, FTC, how many qualifiers? I don't really know FTC.
Oh, dude, that's something I forgot to mention. My goodness. First of all, in case you don't know, there's a number of teams in the world today, right? As of right now, that's the team count for this year. But Green Day, October 5th. Where's mine? Maybe. Oops. So I would encourage all of you, because we're trying to get the whole first community in Ontario to do this. Next Saturday, somehow go outside, do something about green efforts, making the place clean. Where if your team gear, take a picture and send it in to us, and there's prizes, and we would put you on the website. Really, really cool. And keep in mind that all this stuff, you guys have access to all the presentations, right? They put them on a Google Drive for you. The other thing is we're going to start in the near future another challenge to get every team to wear the team jersey, FRC, all levels of first, to that day in school. Right, so let's show everybody, show the whole world about first. This is pretty cool, right? This is going to be great.
Yeah. Most of our team wears their robotic shirts at least once a week.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
We all have a ton, so.
Well, you know what?
Yeah, especially if you're like grade 11 and 12, you have like 7, 8 shirts by that time. Like you're going like.
I mean, yeah, well, I remember I got one work with uniforms and stuff. Because my school is,
Well, that's true.
my school is technically a uniform school, but no one really cares.
Yeah.
Because if they try to enforce it, it would take too much
Yeah.
time.
Well, but you could leverage
Yeah.
the Saturday the 5th thing, right? And do that piece. That would be fantastic. Where are we? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to just shut that part off because it's getting too hot in here